Hello there and welcome to AM Prime here on WESN Contents Capital. I'm Keaton Shaw. It's a pleasure to be back after 2 weeks of having to take care of some business, as my co-host and colleague of another program actually dubbed it. But I'm very happy to be here in the seat once more and very glad that we can have these conversations and discussions. Great thanks goes out to Nikolai Edwards for filling in for the last 2 weeks and for all that he has brought to AM Prime, his contributions. We are grateful and I'm certainly thankful. But as we begin this edition of the program, we're focusing on plastic pollution this morning. It is a global crisis. There is awareness, but has action actually come from that awareness? Well, there's also one area of which is now being viewed as a possibility to actually create greater awareness and hopefully action, and that is virtual reality. Well, this morning I'm joined by two guests to discuss this proposal. My first is in studio with me. That is Miss Lorraine Barrow. She's a librarian at the Institute of Marine Affairs. She's right alongside me, as you can see. Good morning, Miss Barrow.
Good morning, Mr. Shah.
Thank you very much for joining me this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
And I'm also joined by your colleague, actually, via Zoom, and that's Miss Wendy Nelson. She's a Senior Research Officer at the Institute of Marine Affairs. Hello, Miss Nelson. Welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning. Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Well, ladies, thank you very much for joining me on AM Prime this morning. Ms. Nelson, let me start with you, asking you specifically, what is the Institute of Marine Affairs? What is its role? What is its purpose, especially as we are focusing on plastics pollution this morning?
Okay, well, the Institute of Marine Affairs is a statutory body. It's a marine environmental research organization. So our role basically is to conduct research on the marine and related environment and advise the government of the findings of our research so that they can form proper policies, put proper strategies in place, to help conserve our marine environment and, build a better future for the nationals of Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, Ms. Barrow, there are many reports globally that actually detail the impacts, the effects of plastic pollution. Two were actually mentioned in a report that you authored. I actually read that article, found it very interesting. The two you mentioned were the United Nations Environment Programme, that report, as well as the Ocean Conservancy report. Could you just inform us as to some of the details, the information shared in such reports as to the impacts of plastic pollution globally?
Right, so the United Nations Environment Programme, they were looking at the production of plastics, which is really, as you say, it is a global problem, has reached epic proportions. And what they noted is that production of plastics continues. I think in a 2021 report, they indicated that as much as 100 million tons of plastic was produced within the last 10 years annually. And in 2014, I think there was another report by the World Economic Forum that said that it was 78 million. So between 2014 to 2021, within the space of a little over 5 years, you would have seen that it has reached from 78 million to 100 million. And as you mentioned, with the awareness, production of plastic still continues, and that is based on the demand from across the region, across the globe. Basically.
So let's hold on that point, because those statistics are rather alarming, that you go from 70 million tons to 100 million.
Yes.
And yes, there is awareness, but the production, because of obviously the demand, is obviously not helping the situation.
Right.
So let's pause on that point, because I'm going to come back to you, Ms. Nelson. A global crisis indeed, but specifically Trinidad and Tobago. What impact has, or rather what impact is plastic pollution having on our ecosystems?
Well, it's well documented worldwide that, these plastics can have many different impacts on, marine life and ecosystems. You can have entanglement of your species, the different animals, popular ones that people like to mention, like turtles, and swallow, they mistake them for food, plastics, and ingest them. They can have suffocation, entanglement, they can have starvation of these species. And a big topic that's getting a lot of traction these days, well, not these days, for a while now, is the microplastics. So the microplastics are the ones that enter the environment. The primary microplastics enter in the tiny size, for example, like microbeads and the needles that you use in plastic production of like bottles and other plastic products. And the main plastics that people see, in their everyday life, the macroplastics, these degrade once they enter the environment, degrade over time, and due to the wave action or UV light acting on these products. So they break down into smaller plastic pieces also, and these are the secondary microplastics. And the thing is, we're not too sure nowadays what the impact of these microplastics on human health are likely to be, but a lot of studies are going on underway, and they suspect, for example, the toxins that might be absorbed onto the plastics could have an impact on human health. So we know they always have an impact on the macroplastics. Those are the visible ones. Those are the ones that get a lot of mileage. We have the international coastal cleanup. So people come out and help remove the plastics from off the beachfronts and whatnot. So you always have the aesthetic component of it. So it can have an effect on your tourism. You can get trapped in your boat propellers, so impact on your fishing. You can have the plastic net being left out at sea. You can continue fishing, so ghost fishing. So lots of different impacts of the macroplastics, but also impacts of the microplastics that are less well understood.
Just on a side note, you mentioned something called ghost fishing. Precisely what is that?
So when sometimes the fishermen's nets, they get lost out at sea for whatever reason, and they remain out at sea and continue fishing, quote unquote. So the species fish get trapped there, and nobody's there to retrieve them. They're not intentionally fishing and going to retrieve. They just remain out there and trapping species that I guess just remain to die.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. In scientific terms, are we in a danger zone, given the statistics that Ms. Barrow shared with us shortly ago? Are we in the danger zone?
Well, I think the key nowadays is to build a lot of public education and awareness, so people have an idea, of the impacts, and they can modify their behavior to suit. Sorry. Globally, they're looking at implementing or negotiating a global plastics treaty. So Trinidad has a contingent as well that's helping to negotiate or looking after Trinidad's best interest. So this plastic treaty will look at many different aspects. They will look at from the entire life cycle of the plastics, from the manufacturing. You want to make sure that toxic additives are not added, all across the entire life cycle in terms of how we dispose of it at the end as well. Looking at extended producer responsibility. Trinidad has been working on a beverage container deposit and refund system for a while now. It's still in the pipeline. So just like how you have your glass bottles, you carry them in, you get your refund if you bring them back in. They want to do something similar for the plastic bottles as well, to encourage people to not dispose of them. Because whenever you have these international coastal cleanups, the vast majority, maybe close to half of the items collected, plastic beverage bottles.
So now let's tie that back into the point that you made previously with the increase in production of plastics, obviously because of a global demand. But with all this awareness, with all the efforts, such as yours, such as Ms. Nelson's, the Institute of Marine Affairs, and that's Trinidad specifically, but if we were to speak about it globally, with all this awareness and conversations that have been created stemming from plastic pollution, why does it seem to be a lack of inaction?
I think, Mr. Shah, I believe too that, for the actual or for the average human being, when we look at the sea, you see a vast realm of, an expansive blue water. And you might just see a bottle floating on the water and think, okay, this is so huge, that bottle would definitely disappear. But the reality is that under the surface, there's so much of marine pollution, there's so much of plastics. And again, to a lot of us, the water, the sea, the ocean, the river is out of sight. And when it's out of sight, it's out of mind. And so at the end of the day, that awareness, we could read it, we can, you know, it's like a 2-minute wonder. We read it, we understand it, we listen to a radio program, we watch a documentary, and then we get on with our lives like it's business as usual. And so that awareness is still, it's there, but you're not seeing the change in the mindset, you're not seeing the change in the behavior that is required for us to make that change that will conserve our, you know, marine spaces and stop using the plastics, especially the single-use plastics.
Certainly. Now, you just mentioned something there. If you don't really see it, you're not necessarily completely aware of it. Visually, that helps. Precisely how is virtual reality only going to add to this awareness campaign?
Well, it's a very interesting thing because the virtual reality is used a lot by the gaming industry. And at present, the gaming industry has about 1 billion active users, a lot of persons, and especially from the younger generations. That next generation who will feel the brunt of the plastics pollution, basically. And if it is that you can get the messages of, you know, single-use plastic bans, the detrimental effects of continued or prolonged use of plastics into that gaming environment using virtual reality, perhaps, you know, you can perhaps make an impact, a change. I mean, there's still very early studies to show that it may make an impact in terms of your perception and changing your mindset, but not entirely. But basically, you know, like if you read an article about, you know, marine pollution, you would probably have a passive reaction to it. But with the virtual reality, depending on the videos that you see, the photographs that are stitched, you have some very shocking photographs with turtles, you know, tangled in a net. There's a lovely, there's one I think on the website that shows a seahorse, a tiny seahorse wrapped around a Q-tip. So you've got those very moving pictures that can then be stitched, created into a video for persons to see. And they've also got the games. They've got a lot of games I'm seeing online. They had one called Bleached AZ, where it is that persons or, you know, players or users, the aim is for them to slash as many plastics. And the goal is how much plastics you can slash, and you get your points, and it, you know, it goes towards winning the game or whatever it is. But through that, and I mean, when you play the game, you're not going to just do it for 1 day or 2 days or 1 hour. It's going to be an ongoing thing, playing with your friends, with your colleagues, your peers. And so there could just be that impact, I think.
So arguably, there could be a global connection created from virtual reality.
I think so.
And you've used a very good example with video gaming.
Yes.
That's excellent. But back to you, Ms. Nelson, on that particular point. Visually and aesthetically, it helps the situation because you are more aware of it, and there's a possibility utilizing visual, virtual reality, my apologies, that it also allows you to actually be in the environment and experience what sea creatures or marine animals, what they actually face on a daily basis. But the thing is, do you think that there will be an acceptance? In other words, we're all aware of the conversations, we can read the articles, we can receive the pamphlets. Virtual reality, do you think there'd be an actual acceptance of utilizing such technology?
Well, I think it's a good idea. I mean, you know, the more stokes we have in the fire, for want of a better analogy, you know, we can, it's a multi-pronged approach. So this might work with some people, it may not work with others, but it's definitely, you know, something that we should look into, especially with the young people. You know, they constantly, you know, on these phones and games and devices. So I think they always say, you know, they are the future. You know, we put the messages out. We may not, it may be a little too late for the elder folk. You know, it's kind of set in their ways, but certainly if we can reach the young people who will be able to implement the policies and stuff later on in life, I think, yes, it's a unique, interesting, novel way to go.
So then, I've made the argument before that technology has led to the advancement of mankind. No doubt about it.
Yes.
You can't argue against that. However, it's also probably led to our decline. Is it now, once more, going to be our savior?
Well, again, it has to be based on research and data. A lot of data has to be collected. And there are reports out there that showing, for example, you know, when you have a group of students or focus groups, and you get them into that immersive setting to see what their reaction will be, it's not just the oohs and the ahs and watching it, but it evokes from them a response of shock of, you know, this is what the marine environment looks, you know, on the seabed, and it can, you know, they can walk away with it with that, you know, impression or thinking or a memory of, you know, wow, look at what my buying a bottle of water or Coke can do if we don't properly dispose of it, or better yet, if we refrain from using it, basically. And the whole idea is not really just to shock, but to the goal is to see if we can get persons to change their choice in purchasing or buying, you know, consumables that don't really have plastics, but basically recyclable products, etc. And it's not just only in terms of food, but clothing as well.
Yes.
You can get your purchase clothing that is made from recyclable stuff as materials. And so once we can get all on board in that area, virtual reality may just be, it can definitely, I think, be one way to go, especially with the younger generation, as Wendy had just so correctly stated. Because, I mean, that is the tools that they use now, that gaming environment, and that is where we need to be in their space. I mean, we need to get the messages out in their space for them to see it. And from documentaries using virtual reality, augmented reality, as well as into the games, you know, we just need them to be bombarded with these messages, you know, in the space and the tools that they use. So I'm hoping and thinking that it should be.
Well, I think it's a grand idea, but Ms. Nelson, your thoughts? I know you mentioned that you also support the idea, but you know, seeing that it's possibly going to contribute in a beneficial way to the Beat Plastics program, that campaign, is it cost effective? Technology is not cheap. Is it cost effective?
Well, I think you'd have to do, you know, your cost-benefit analysis. I think depending on the situations, yeah, you might be able to, you know, put in some, like how we had at the symposia for the schools. So you have schools coming in to visit, perhaps, or maybe we can take it out to the different schools. So the benefits may eventually, you know, outweigh the cost. So, but it's worth a try at least, I would say.
And of course, I know that you certainly support that as well. Cost effective, in your opinion?
In the beginning, initially, of course, when these the software comes out with the VR goggles itself, it will be expensive. But of course, with more persons purchasing it and different brands coming out, the cost will reduce, and definitely the benefits do outweigh the cost. If it's going to be, you know, trying to get persons, especially the next generation, to, you know, think on what they do and how their actions can adversely impact the marine environment, the terrestrial environment, I think it's definitely worth considering, and of course worth trying as well. I think so.
And is it that there's a hope that it'll also lead to further actions, such as recycling campaigns? I mean,
that's right. Yeah.
In Trinidad and Tobago, we have recycling bins, but as a society, we're not necessarily habitual in terms of recycling.
No, we are not. And I mean, we do have one or two, you know, areas, as well as one or two schools that will be focused on, you know, in terms of keeping up and maintaining that recycling. But yes, I agree with you. We don't really keep and maintain it, but we have to find ways. We have to find, you know, innovative ways and other ways we can try and get the population, from the young ones in the kindergarten school right up to the very mature persons. We need all to be on. We all need to be on board to do our part. And in terms of the recycling, those are messages that will have to continue being, you know, created and disseminated. But the way we disseminate it, that can probably be looked at in different ways. I know they've got the green screens that is done annually, where we can get to see the documentaries, and a lot of schools are invited. The Institute of Marine Affairs as well has a very vibrant outreach program. We go to different schools. And 4 years ago in 2019, under our Chief Information Officer, Ms. Alicia Carter-Fisher, we did do our first immersive and interactive exhibition at NALIS. We invited several hundred schools. And we use those VR goggles for them to see, to interact. And I think as much as 83% of the students were really, blown away by what they saw. And for them, what they would have seen within a 15 minutes, use of the VR goggles, it would have probably taken them like a term or semester to understand exactly the impact of what is going on out there. So I think the visual does have
I think
greater leverage.
somewhere along the lines, Ms. Nelson and Ms. Barrow, we're going to have somebody arguing, though, that these VR goggles themselves are made from plastic. So it's going to be a bit difficult. We can't please everybody, and I understand the arguments. However, again, a cost-benefit analysis, 1, recycling, 2, and just beyond that, it's how we produce and how much we produce.
Yes.
So it's certainly things to look at. Now, to the viewers watching the program this morning, if you'd like more information, Ms. Doreen Barrow's article entitled Using Virtual Reality to Beat Plastic Pollution. I'll repeat it for you. Using Virtual Reality to #beat plastic pollution. Well, that's available via the Trinidad and Tobago Newsday newspaper. Excellent article to read if you get the opportunity. Very extensive and detailed. But ladies, thank you very much for waking up early to join me this morning and to have a very important conversation. And beyond that, rather interesting, using virtual reality to help beat plastic pollution. Ms. Barrow, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thanks very much.
And Ms. Nelson, a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, is Ms. Doreen Barrow, librarian at the Institute of Marine Affairs, as well as Ms. Wendy Nelson via Zoom, Senior Research Officer at the Institute of Marine Affairs. Ladies and gentlemen, we take a break here on AM Prime, and when we return, we'll continue the conversations this morning. Stay tuned to the program.
Did you tell your hubby about it, first of all?
I did.
When you were telling him, did you think that he was going to think differently of you or less of you?
I thought exactly that.
In case you've missed it, it's an encore of Nicole Larson Live. Relive some of the riveting experiences of everyday people who candidly shared with me their stories, life challenges, stories of hope, and eventual victories.
Because he is not like man, because he is the God. It is a promise that we can hold on to.
The report came back that she had 2 properly...
Eric, behave yourself, no man.
2 properly working kidneys.
An encore of Nicole Larson Live, living in victory every day. Airing on WESN, the content capital, on Sunday, July 2nd at 8 p.m. Don't you miss it.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Site, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
As Kevin Hart would say, damn! Why we have so much minors out on the streets? There's an after-school program happening there. Side women, don't give up. You know, you can become queen one day. Those companies who are currently looking for their money that they deposited in the Silicon Valley Bank, it's not there. ChatGPT is basically the start of Terminator. Our relationship with the colonial powers is like a relationship with a little bit of abuse that people like to stay in. And we remember how that was. Put in $100 and later tonight, you'll get back 3,000. I promise you. I promise you not. Did you rent an accent while you were across there?
When you're in the proximity of Donald Trump, somehow you adopt his aura.
First of all, I thought the $200 would be more than enough. It's $200.
As a goat farmer, I had 3 goats. Yeah, 3 goats and 1 cow. You know the name?
No, I don't.
Right, Messi, LeBron, and Cristiano Ronaldo. And the cow named Haaland.
I love Trinidad and Tobago, you know.
Between 2020 and 2022, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service recorded 4,857 reports of domestic violence.
And there was a general figure that 10% of men may be abusers. When we look at the abusers, we found that some of them, it's like a scripted behavior.
Let's say my sister, I suspect she's in an abusive relationship. What are the signs that I need to look out for, early signs?
What's Up, Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, it's for all of us in public.
Welcome back to AM Prime here on WESN Content Capital. Thank you very much for staying with us this morning as we get into conversation number 2. We're focusing on the Hispanic community here in Trinidad and Tobago and why cultural integration is crucial and how such may actually help alleviate or prevent the abuse experienced by some Venezuelans here in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm joined by the Managing Director of the La Casita Hispanic Cultural Center, Ms. Adriana Briceno Ventura Brown. She's with us via Zoom this morning. Hello, Ms. Ventura Brown. Welcome to the program.
Oh, good morning. Buenos días. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. The Venezuelan community here in Trinidad and Tobago, is it one that we can now say is a part of us, is a part of TNT's fabric, is a part of who we are?
Well, not only now, historically, we are very tight. We are very close. When I came to Trinidad, I came to meet family because my great-grandmother migrated to Venezuela, and that is how we have those ties, no? And yes, after the influx, approximately in 2017, we started to get a lot of Venezuelans coming across to Trinidad. And now in 2023, we can say they are settled, but they still need to be a little more welcome in terms of basic rights and and more opportunities. But they are here, they are given the best they can give to the community, the society of Trinidad and Tobago. And even some of them speak English now and works.
So why is cultural integration so important? You just mentioned that they still need to be given basic rights, and I'm hoping you can just elaborate on that a bit further. But beyond that, why is cultural integration so important?
Well, remember, as we know each other, we know where we come from, we know what culture, we know what our roots, we will be able to understand each other. So it's through like Asita, that is what we do. We're trying to expose the culture, we're trying to mix the cultures, we're trying to let both communities meet each other through culture, so they can, kind of interact a little bit, because then actually know a little more where the people come from and how they move and what they like, what they dislike, And yes, basic rights, because yes, the community is here, the community have the freedom to move around, but they still missing a lot of basic rights. Like, for example, education is one of the most important right now. Access to the services, access to the justice, access to, we're working on that. We're going great. We have a lot of support now. We also see how the government have the input to try, but we still have to work a little more together to build a better society in Trinidad and Tobago.
So historically, Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela is linked, it's tied, and there is that understanding, or at least I hope there is that understanding. So, in your opinion, why do you think there's been such resistance to this integration of which we're speaking of?
Well, remember, first and all, the linguistic barrier, all right? The community comes here, they speak Spanish, and Trinidad and Tobago speak English. That is the first thing actually shock the integration. But as soon as people understand then, and then looking for a way to express themselves, all right, things are coming along. We have a lot of groups that settled very well. We have sports groups who are already mixed with Trinidadian groups in competitions, and we have a lot of musical groups also who are already being part of parties, local parties, showing the diversity in the culture. Since I think the opportunities in work are open for many of them, but they still need some more ways to get better opportunities in Trinidad. We still have a lot of issues in terms of when they settle, they don't have the right, or well, that is not a right, it's a privilege, but they don't have the opportunity to get driver's license in the country. I still have a lot of issues with the bank accounts, or to actually go to the bank to cash a check, and most of their business here have to accommodate to help them. We have people who charge in the NIS, and since the registration process till now, we still not too clear, isn't really have the right of benefit of the social welfare, or then just thinking the dues that tax, but nothing really moving forward. So still have a lot of things who has to be in place, but I believe the community is willing, and the community here already doing the best they can do with this, little space, what is being done for them.
Mm-hmm. So let me focus now on one specific avenue, which has been circulating recently across the news here in Trinidad and Tobago. And if we were to focus on gender-based violence and some of the abuses that Venezuelans face, do you think that cultural integration, so that there is a better understanding, would help prevent such abuses and even exploitation?
Well, for us, it's one of the most tremendous risk right now, because women, Venezuelan women, Latin American women are being exposed a lot. And even then trying to mix and trying to do a lot of different things, but it's still being as a element of exploitation. All right, they're still being like, they are here to do only that and by force. Some of them trying to make families here, and yes, the cultural elements are very exposed. Then the language barrier is kind of break down when you try to deal with couples and stuff, but they're still not understanding probably the freedom and the respect the woman have to get in these relationships, and we are being victims of abuse, domestic violence, human trafficking, and all these different violence what can be done with this gender based is drastically for us is something what we need to move forward with that, and we just have to try to do prevention to get them kind of guide them even before then actually trying to choose Trinidad and Tobago as a homeland.
Now, the very first avenue for dealing with such matters, obviously the police service. I know that La Casita has actually assisted Venezuelan women with making reports at police stations. But in your experiences, what has the reception been like, and even the action of police officers at police stations when women are making reports of abuses against them? I'm sorry, I know you also mentioned the language barrier, which will also play a role in such reports. But all the factors that you've actually mentioned this morning, even with the experience with the police service, what has that been like?
But like I said, being a process, a very hard process. We worked together with gender-based violence unit to get those reports actually processed. At times, we have a very, very difficult communications. Not all the officers are so receptive, but we are working with those who already have the knowledge of what's going on. We are working with those police officers in high ranks who already have the sensitization about the situation, about even in our first conversation with the Minister of National Security, Mr. Hines, was surprised to know how Venezuelans, even with the that problem with the status, they was feeling so they was not ready to make reports or come forward because the abuse in the stations and the re-victimization, because they used to come to the stations and instead of seeing about the issue of domestic violence or gender violence, then used to just victimize them as because they don't have no legal status in the country. So that was our first step, trying to make sure if they don't have any kind of document who can identify them to first and all deal with the matter of the violence, and after trying to deal with the migration process, because that was the first. But now the biggest problem we have is when the victims are actually reporting being harassed by police officers, because they don't want to come forward at all. They feel so afraid, and we put we put, ourselves there to support and help them to make the reports, help with the language barrier, but also try to make sure they have some kind of safe environment and can continue and break down all this circle of crime in terms of violence because they are not receptive. But other than that, we really have a good team to work with. Then receive it. We using a lot of the open doors policy because some of them, they don't want to make reports because they feel they have friends there and stuff like that. They not feel safe, they not feel secure, and that is why we trying to move around and work with the system to make it better for them.
Because of the lack of legal entitlements, in your opinion, is there a belief that Latin American women do not deserve justice?
Maybe, but we trying to make that perception change because has a lot of stigmas going on all over, not only in Trinidad, and maybe because they feel our run to Trinidad has different characteristics, or women and men in Trinidad they don't really clear why people running from Venezuela, for example, since they feel probably we are not deserved as a Venezuelans or Latin American woman, how you said, but justice for everyone. And I think when it's touching home or it's touching somebody close, then they will really understand a little more how important is to just put race or discrimination, xenophobia, and all those different ugly things aside to understand the other part. You have to put in somebody else's shoes to know exactly how hard it's been for Latin American women sometimes to survive in a country like Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, I'm actually pleased that you mentioned that word xenophobia, and it now comes into my next question as we actually near the conclusion of our conversation this morning, and that is, you've constantly mentioned legal entitlements. You even use the examples of driving in Trinidad and Tobago driver's licenses, of even bank accounts. Extensively, we've mentioned reporting to police officers the abuse faced by some of these women. In terms of legal entitlements and La Casita's efforts, where are we as a nation in terms of any progress whatsoever towards granting legal entitlements to Venezuelans? Is it that the conversations have just continued and fallen on deaf ears? Or do you actually see efforts being made to grant legal entitlements to Venezuelan men and women?
Right. Let me see as I try to understand. Well, Trinidad and Tobago tried their best. Then really has some things on the table. We still trying our best to help in any Anyway, we're trying to help to kind of balance everything, but we definitely need the intervention of the government. They need to do what they have to do. Has a lot of good practices around the world, what can be taken in consideration. Has a lot of countries where you can see a good examples of the integration of the Venezuelans, the Venezuelan migrants and refugees and asylum seekers into the society, helping with the economy, helping with so many things, but then have to feel welcome, then have to feel settled, then have to feel secure. It's not they will continue the journey and these people on the move will be all over again trying to settle where they have better opportunities, but have countries where they already has a lot of things in place. And I think it's time for Trinidad and Tobago to look at that, because that story of we are a small island, we will sink as we receive more Venezuelans. No, is you receive the Venezuelans now and you already have them here. We're going through the process again of registration. We're going through, to identify again probably the numbers of Venezuelans who are here. But you need to open mind, you open, you know, the ideals, what we really want for the country, what we really are building, because yes, it's a present right now. We probably put things in another perspective because the benefit for some people, but we definitely have to be open mind in terms of the benefit for our country. And I say our country because I have 22 years in Trinidad, more than half of my life in Trinidad. And right now it's kind of difficult for me to actually settle and be in here so long because things are changing. And not to mention it's because the migration, no, but you have responsibility as a country. You sign different conventions and different things. You have the responsibility to look at what is the best for your community, what is the best for Trinidad and Tobago. When you have that in your grounds already, the land already has a lot of Venezuelans, a lot of migrants. So you have to look for a solution to make your citizens feel secure as well, to feel safe, to feel they welcome the new family into, and they will give them the opportunities they need to settle and help them. Because I always put that example as a, yes, you are very nice as you receive and your family, your friends at home. But after a certain time, you cannot be taking water from them from the fridge. You cannot be doing a lot of stuff. You want them to feel a little independence, so then move, you know. Says don't make people feel like they have that in their shoulders. There's responsibility of the citizens to mix the responsibility of the citizens for the exclusion. No. Yes, they have responsibility, but the biggest responsibility is on the government hands. Mm-hmm. And then have to then have to look forward and look for the good practices around the world, check again those conventions and see what their responsibilities to take care of all those who are in the country. Mm-hmm. Including their own citizens.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, I'm very appreciative that you mentioned in terms of your experience being in TNT for 22 years, which is more than half of your life. Even now, you're still facing difficulties. So it's very difficult to probably even try to imagine what Venezuelan migrants are facing. Those who have come to our shores in the last few years, and it's why conversations such as this one this morning is very important for raising what they are experiencing. But Ms. Ventura Brown, thank you very much for joining me on the program this morning. Thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing some of these experiences with us. I wish you all the very best in your continued efforts, and I can only hope that things get better. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Just hope we can this year get the children in schools and start, you know, because we need to get Trinidad and Tobago move forward. Our society deserves it and need it.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. That was Ms. Adriana Briseno Ventura Brown, the Managing Director at La Casita Hispanic Cultural Center, speaking to us this morning about why cultural integration is crucial. Ladies and gentlemen, we take a break here on AM Prime. When we return, we'll get into some regional updates. Stay tuned to the program.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Welcome back to AM Prime. Just a bit of fun this morning. It happens sometimes with live television. Well, there you go. You see, my desk is a bit empty, but we will be welcoming our guest shortly via Zoom. In the meantime, let's take a look at what's happening across the region. We start with the nation of Haiti, where food is becoming increasingly hard to find for many in Haiti. The World Food Programme says half the population face acute shortages.
There have been more civilians killed in Haiti than Ukraine in the first.
As armed gangs tighten their grip on the streets, talks aimed at ending the long-running crisis, well, have once more failed. We'll take a look at this report coming from Haiti.
This is something we're going to be monitoring very, very closely.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Tuesday that he voiced concerns to his counterparts in China during a rare trip to Beijing.
There have been more civilians killed in Haiti than Ukraine in the first months of 2023, according to the United Nations World Food Programme. Powerful gangs are battling overmatched police in the streets of the capital, Port-au-Prince. In the middle, the population. Exclandia Belizaire lives in Cité Soleil, an epicenter of the violence. Her stepfather was shot dead on her doorstep. Now she's worried about her daughters.
Look at all the bullet holes at my door and my ceiling. I ask for help so my daughters can go to the school. I don't want them to be at the streets exposed to the criminals. They are girls.
Sexual violence is rife in Haiti. Gangs use rape to cow and control the population in their domains. And their grip is only tightening. The United Nations estimates that 80% of the capital is run by criminal groups. It's affecting access to food. Half of all Haitians now face acute food insecurity, more than in Somalia and Afghanistan, says the World Food Programme. Famine itself has arrived in Cité Soleil. The red on the tape indicates that this child is severely malnourished.
I would say that people have been starved in Port-au-Prince. It's definitely been the case here that armed groups have been isolating parts of Port-au-Prince. They've been using siege tactics, and that's entirely unacceptable. In rural areas, what's going on is that these gangs are fighting for farmland, and they're fighting for their food sources.
That includes Haiti's breadbasket, the Artibonite, affecting the food supply even more. Merchant Adania Pierce was kidnapped on her way to market.
They told us they were going to kill us. They didn't give us food or water for days, and they blindfolded us. It was so tight that it hurt our eyes. The money that I borrowed is now worrying me a lot. People who lend me money ask me now to pay them back. They took a loan at the bank for me. Now I stay at home. I don't know what to do.
Recently, heavy rains have also struck Haiti, turning thousands out of their homes. A fresh blow to a country already suffering. John Holman, Al Jazeera.
Well, the situation in Haiti has not gotten better at all. In fact, most recently, regional leaders, more specifically coming out of Guyana, President Dr. Irfan Mohamed Ali, Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali, highlighting the need for intervention in Haiti as over half the population faces acute food shortages and, of course, hunger. 80% of Port-au-Prince is now controlled by gangs. That is alarming, considering just about 3 weeks to a month ago, we reported that about 60% of Port-au-Prince was controlled by gangs. 20%, I suppose the police still have a grip on that. How long? Well, we are not entirely sure. But food certainly is running out, as well as fuel and pharmaceuticals. Moving across now to Cuba, the United States has pressed its call for military communication channels with China and signaled its concern over reports that suggest China plans a military training facility in Cuba, following the Secretary of State Anthony Blinken's trip to Beijing. This report coming out of the United States with regards to China's influence in Cuba.
This is something we're going to be monitoring very, very closely.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Tuesday that he voiced concerns to his counterparts in China during a rare trip to Beijing about China's military activities in Cuba.
We made very clear that we would have deep concerns about PRC intelligence or military activities in Cuba. And we will protect our homeland. We will protect our interests.
The Wall Street Journal reported on Tuesday that China and Cuba are negotiating to establish a joint military training facility on the island that could lead to the stationing of Chinese troops just 100 miles off Florida's coast. Speaking at a press conference in London after his trip to Beijing, Blinken said he pressed for opening military communication channels with China.
President Biden sent me to Beijing because he believes strongly that both the United States and China have an obligation to manage our relationship responsibly. And that starts with strengthening lines of communication.
During Blinken's visit to Beijing earlier this week, the first by a U.S. Secretary of State since 2018, the nations agreed to temper rivalries to avoid conflict, but there were no breakthroughs.
I think both countries see the importance of trying to bring more stability to the relationship.
A lack of open channels between both nations has prompted international jitters, with Beijing's reluctance to engage in regular military-to-military talks with Washington alarming China's neighbors. In Beijing, the two sides appeared entrenched over a multitude of issues, from Taiwan to trade, including U.S. actions toward China's chip industry, plus human rights, and Russia's war against Ukraine, to which China maintains an impartial response.
President Biden said from the outset of Russia's aggression against Ukraine that we would stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes.
Blinken also said on Tuesday that he would announce a new and robust U.S. assistance package for Ukraine on Wednesday at a conference in London aimed at encouraging private companies to invest in the country's reconstruction after Russia's invasion.
Our final region update this morning comes from the nation of Jamaica. The government has imposed a state of public emergency in the areas of St. James and Westmoreland. It began at 12:01 a.m. on Thursday and will last for 15 days. The state of emergency is aimed at quelling murders in the parishes. This report coming from Jamaica.
Residents in 2 parishes are being told to brace for more restrictions as the security forces intensify operations in search of guns and wanted men in St. James and Westmoreland. However, the police say major thoroughfares will not be impacted. Anthony Lugg has details.
Yet another declaration of a state of emergency, this time in St. James and Westmoreland. In a release on Thursday, the Office of the Prime Minister revealed that between January 1 to June 19 this year, the St. James Police Division recorded 95 homicides, while Westmoreland recorded 54. Assistant Commissioner Clifford Chambers is commanding officer for the Area 1 Police.
The major crimes are below where they were last year, same time. But what we're seeing is a quickening in the closing of the gaps. We do have persons who are being pursued assiduously based on they being put up as high-value target. We have some major arrests.
Residents of St. James and Westmoreland have become familiar with the declaration of the enhanced security measure, which many argue is ineffective. The police, however, say they've identified several persons wreaking havoc across the 2 parishes.
We will be targeting some persons, we'll be targeting some communities. We will be ensuring that the detectives are out there to gather what evidence necessary to build their cases. But generally speaking, we will be moving into close to a lockdown.
But with complaints from business operators in the past about the impact of the restrictions, ACP Chambers sought to alleviate those concerns this time around.
We are not looking to lock down major thoroughfares as we have done in the past, but we will be targeting some persons who are creating the issues out there for us.
In announcing the measure, Prime Minister Andrew Holness emphasized that the security forces are compelled to respond to a surge in criminal activities in both parishes. Thursday's SOE declaration comes on the heels of a similar declaration in St. James, Hanover and Clarendon in May. The measure, which took effect after midnight, will run for 14 days. Anthony Lugg, TVJ News.
Ladies and gentlemen, we take a break here on AM Prime. When we return, I'll welcome my final 2 guests for this morning's edition of the program. Stay tuned.
Did you tell your hubby about it, first of all?
I did.
When you were telling him, did you think that he was going to think differently of you or less of you?
I thought exactly that.
In case you've missed it, it's an encore of Nicole Larson Live. Relive some of the riveting experiences of everyday people who candidly shared with me their stories, life challenges, stories of hope, and eventual victories.
Because he is not like man, because he is the God. It is a promise that we can hold on to.
The report came back that she had 2 properly...
Eric, behave yourself, no man.
2 properly working kidneys.
An encore of Nicole Larson Live, living in victory every day. Airing on WESN, the content capital, on Sunday, July 2nd at 8 p.m. Don't you miss it.
Young at heart, purpose-driven, patriot even. When you like to party, but are still passionate about discussing important issues, the only place where your needs will be met is WESN Content Capital.
7 is out. All day is in. WESN News on the hour.
We are WESN, the premier platform for Caribbean content. WESN, covering West, East, South, and North. WESN, we entertainment, sports, and news. WESN, available on Greendot 7, Amplia 118, Airlink 17, Bmobile 107, Digicel 21, ICNTT 105, and Flow 110. Connect with us at WESNCC or stream online at www.wesncc.com. WESN, your premier platform for Caribbean content.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole. It's for all of us in public.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Between 2020 and 2022, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service recorded 4,857 reports of domestic violence.
And there was a general figure that 10% of men may be abusers. When we look at the abusers, we found that some of them, it's like a scripted behavior.
Let's say my sister, I suspect she's in an abusive relationship. What are the signs that I need to look out for? Early signs.
What's Up, Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Well, Welcome back to AM Prime, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for staying with us this morning as we get into our final conversation. I'm joined by my two guests. The first is the chairman of the Tobago Agribusiness Development Company, Mr. Richard Alfred. Hello, Mr. Alfred. Welcome to the program.
Hi, good morning and welcome, and good morning to all your viewership.
Thank you. And alongside him is the Chief Executive Officer of the Tobago Agribusiness Development Company, Mr. Dionisio Salazar. Good morning, sir.
Morning and welcome to your viewership as well.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me as we have a conversation this morning focusing on supporting rural development through agribusiness, a focus that is on Tobago's agricultural practices. Let me start with you, Mr. Alfred, by asking you about TADCO. If you could inform the viewership as to the company itself and its primary activities.
Right, so good morning again. So the aim of TADCO, which is the Tobago Agribusiness Development Company, is to ensure that the agro-processors and the farmers definitely have a space where they could actually have their products brought to the market at a more international standard as relates to exporting. So at TADCO, we are the only, the largest cold storage facility on the island. We also offer warehousing space. We also offer persons to bring in their products, and if we believe that it is good to be on the market, we can showcase it there. We have a vessel called the Capital of Paradise. It's one of the larger long-line vessels in Trinidad and Tobago. And we definitely, our target species is called yellowfin tuna. Currently, the vessel is out at sea. It's just off of Brazil, just close there, about 200 nautical miles there, doing some fishing. The market that we look at for that is to definitely for the company to earn some foreign exchange. The vessel does pretty well actually, and on average, it just came back into operation last year, June. It was done for approximately just under 5 years. Can't really comment on that part, but it is a very viable option to get the fishermen and them to move away from things like the pirogue fishing and get them more into the long line vessel. And then we would have partnered with a couple of different entities in terms of collaboration as relates to Kariri, NAMDEFCO, and a few other stakeholders as relates to getting the agro-processors and getting their products tested and getting it on the market and the regional market. So that's where we are as relates to TADCO in a summary.
Mr. Salazar, how does your company support local communities and promote rural development?
So at TADCO, what we've been doing over the last year and more, we have been reaching out to the different subsectors in the agricultural sector through workshop initiatives. So as the chairman would have indicated, we have strategic collaboration, strategic alliances, and several instances, memorandum of understanding with key stakeholders in the sector. And what we're doing is facilitating a transfer of knowledge to the subsectors within the agriculture sector via these stakeholder collaborations. So in terms of reaching out to communities, so I'll give you an example. We have, Mr. Alfred mentioned about the Capital of Paradise. We have collaborated with the Fisheries Division and provided a workshop as late as December last year that would have helped in developing the sector towards development of the sector in terms of the fishing sector. We've been working with primary producers in terms of farmers. Over the year, last year, we've had several workshops. We also have embarked on a poultry contract farming initiative, and that has led to a transfer of knowledge both in-house in terms of TADCO's capacity development internally, as well as towards farmers on the island involved in poultry. We also have collaborated with, as the chairman would have indicated, NAMDEFCO, and right now we're building that capacity with that arrangement in terms of transferring good agricultural practices, again adding to the knowledge base of farmers and primary producers on the island. So at this juncture, in terms of reaching out to communities, we have been not just reaching out to communities, but we're reaching out to farmers and by extension those communities through these initiatives and working with workshops to help build the capacity on the island.
Mm-hmm. Well, in your opinion, Mr. Salazar, has such partnerships, the example used is NAMDEVCO, but beyond that, the transfer of knowledge of which both yourself and Mr. Alfred has spoken of, do you think this has led to the growth of agricultural industries in Tobago? You use the example of the poultry industry. Has it been success in terms of growth?
We think that we have seen some impact this juncture. It's still early in the stages in terms of we're just about 9 months into the poultry contract farming initiative, for example. And we have already reached capacity as it relates to the ability for us to slaughter the birds in a timely manner. So we are working on developing, and we had already initiated workshops last year into this year on that slaughtering initiative, and we are continuously developing the sector in that capacity. So we're seeing some results. Even with the farmers, we've seen some results in terms of farmers are excited and interested in partnering with us and working towards developing the sector. So we believe that at this juncture, we have made an impact, especially with the agro-processors, because we're looking at, as the chairman would have indicated, good manufacturing practices, HACCP standards, and food safety and food security, right? Those are key initiatives of ours. In terms of developing the food security, because of the cold storage facility we have, as well as the dry storage capacity we have been starting to see some consistency in what we have been doing. And that will now be tracked in terms of data collection so that we can utilize the data analytics as it relates to tracking the development of this sector. Mm-hmm. So 1.5 years, 2 years into TATCO's, well, actually TATCO is just 3 years, but 2 years into its operation already, and we're starting to see some results, and we're hopeful that our initiatives will yield the benefits that we are looking for on the island, which is a consistent, high-quality product out of the island in the context of primary production, which is like root crops, fruits, and vegetables, and the added value products such as what are produced by the agro-processors on the island. Mm-hmm. As you know, Tobago is very unique for its culinary repertoire, and we perceive that those unique culinary experiences can be honed and possibly exported beyond the shores of Tobago.
Mr. Alfred, the support for smaller businesses and for products, that is something that you mentioned as well. It also ties back in to what Mr. Salazar just mentioned about the quality of products, even in terms of culturally palatable products, the cuisine. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was late last year, there was also the introduction of local flour that is produced in Tobago, such as cassava flour, to the shelves in Tobago. Has there been, since such an introduction, do you believe that there's been a shift towards these local products, away from the more accustomed imported flour products?
Right. So if I can just stymie back to what the CEO mentioned there, right? So just to keep in mind, let me just give you some figures onto the public. So you had mentioned how we are doing stuff for the farmers and what is the benefit. So prior to TATCO, prior to this new board at TATCO, they were involved in a lot of foreign items as relates to the foreign chicken, the chicken nuggets, all these different stuff. And we saw that coming in here, we definitely have to do work as relates to getting the local products on the market here in Tobago and regionally. So the poultry product, right now, TATCO is the largest supplier of local chicken on the market. That is one of our high accomplishments there. Just to give you some more figures, again, 56 billion chicken is consumed every year globally. Trinidad and Tobago consumes close to 43 million chicken every year. Tobago, an average of 230 to 250,000 birds is consumed every month. Within this 5-year plan, the strategic plan, we're definitely going to reach those targets. And through the collaboration with the major stakeholders in Trinidad, who we are very grateful to, they have assisted us. And the farmers now, we would market the chicken for them. It's our chicken. We give them a chicken to mine it through the contracts, and they are paid based on numbers. So it's a numbers game. Let me go to the fishing now. The same yellowfin tuna now, it's exported, yes, but some of the fish come to Tobago, the bycatch, which is the things like the shark, the mahi-mahi, the kingfish, the ocean guard, all these fish would come to Tobago, and persons would make value-added products, things like smoked fish. Yesterday we had, on Saturday, so we had something called Everything Mango. I was able to taste mango fish. And, you know, all of these indigenous things are what we are doing definitely to assist the smaller companies and the persons who are doing the different value-added products. You mentioned the flour. So, you know, we had some rain and some stuff happening last year. So we are there with through contracts again with the farmers who are doing cassava to definitely get the quantity that we want so that we can do things like the cassava flour and all these things. Currently, we do things like the cassava waffle mix, the breadfruit waffle mix, sweet potato waffle mix, plantain pancakes. So all these things are on the market. Definitely getting to get the average person a taste into their palates so that when there's a shortage of wheat, which may come upon us, persons will not have a hard time changing over into the alternative.
Well, Mr. Alfred, no, and thank you for clarifying that. I understand that, but what about the reception from Tobagonians towards these more locally produced products?
Right, so the reception we're getting so far, right now we have oversubscribed. We have a lot of persons coming on. Right now we're in the process of getting their lands prepared through the tractor pool, through a collaboration with the tractor pool to get their lands prepared in terms of plowing and getting the beds, bank and rotovate so that they can get the production done. So that's where we are. So it's coming along very good. We have the equipment as relates to making the flour and all this stuff. So everything is working out pretty fine actually. It's just that we have to be mindful of the weather right now. But it's on track, and we have a lot of persons on board.
Well, Dr. Rita Pemberton, you know, she mentioned most recently at a UE Agricultural Forum, historically, Tobago was able to actually produce food for itself and even for Trinidad. And she mentioned that during World War I and during World War II, Tobago was producing food for both islands, supplying food for both islands. But and that's from a historical context. But at this point, Mr. Alfred, is Tobago able to feed itself, or is it now dependent on Trinidad farming for its food?
Right, so let me go back and give you some history there, right? Seeing as some persons are going back quite to World War I. So Tobago, yes, used to be the agricultural basket of Trinidad and Tobago. You know, with the advent of all these developments as relates to now you having estates that were once agricultural converted into commercial buildings and housing and all these things. You have a less land in terms of preparation. I would say that currently, and then you have the fast ferry. So before you had those other boats that used to take 10 and 12 hours, you couldn't have perishable items coming across on the local ferry. But now you have a ferry that takes about 2.5 to 3 hours. So you have a lot of middlemen in terms of going on to Trinidad, buying stuff at a cheaper price and then bringing up. So all that is affecting the growth of the agricultural sector in Tobago. However, due to we are now embarking on the things like greenhouses, the aquaponics and the hydroponics, we are definitely seeing a change and a shift in terms of how persons are actually producing. We definitely have to embrace the technology to definitely get us to see the different yields that that we want. We would have impacted on some training as relates to from an agronomist in terms of for the cassavas, in terms of the different types of fertilizer that they must use to definitely bring their yield within a shorter time. So I would say that we are on the path. Currently with the factors of the fast ferry and the availability of the land in terms of proper development of these same said lands, because you have a lot of hilly lands and slopes and stuff like that, which will require a bit more work to get these land prepared. But I would say we have embraced technology, and I am seeing a shift. I am a registered farmer, a company. So I am seeing a change actually in terms of agricultural produce from Tobago.
Is that speaking from a farmer's perspective or from the chairman of TATCO's perspective?
I'm speaking from a farmer perspective. So let me give you some more example, right? You have a lot of rain that is going to be coming very soon, right? So things that are cash crops, if you want to call them cash crops, the cucumbers, the tomatoes, sweet pepper, flavor and pepper, all these things are, well, most of the farmers that I know are actually preparing for them when these things happen, so that you will have a constant market on the you know, of these same set items on the market. We are, you know, in Trinidad, you have a lot of mono farming, persons doing one crop in a very large scale, whereas in Tobago, you have slightly of everything together. So it's definitely working with the farmers in terms of getting them to do a schedule in terms of their crops and getting that done properly. So, yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Salazar, the final question actually goes to you, sir. I mean, everyone could do with more money in terms of the support that is necessary to achieve the goals and even to actually reduce the issues as it relates to farming and agribusiness as experienced in Tobago. And both you and Mr. Alfred highlighted some of those issues this morning. Is there a need for greater support from central government, or is it that it's there, it's working? Because NAMDEVCO's partnership was mentioned, but central government in terms of funding, for example, is the support there?
Actually, I would have preferred the chairman to answer that question, but seeing that it's posed to me, what I would say is that Tobago on its own has been working diligently towards development of the sector, and through our stakeholder collaborations, we have collaborated with the ADB, the venture capital, the business development unit here in Tobago, and we are astutely working with the farmers to help them build capacity by on our side in terms of the development and providing the knowledge they need to be successful at their projects, whether it be agro-processors, primary producers as it relates to farmers or others. But in terms of access to funding, there are grants as well that we have. So again, to the workshops that we have held in 2022, those persons who have attended have been working astutely and getting access to those funding required through the initiatives that we have put. So TATCO in itself as a development entity has been ensuring that its stakeholders, more so the primary producers, the agro-processors, have been able to access the funding required for their development. Because we are not a funding agency. So, but as it relates to the THA and the support from the THA, TATCO has been able to get that through the chairman and the board. They have done their part, and we as a development company, we are ensuring that the farmers, the agro-processors, and those other stakeholders in the sector are receiving the support they require financially. So I want to go back to the poultry contract farming initiative.
Mr. Salazar, I must apologize. We are actually over time. And I do apologize. I'm just going to give Mr. Alfred 30 seconds. I know he said you would prefer if he answered the question. I'm going to give him 30 seconds to give his input on that particular question. Mr. Alfred, very quickly.
Yes, brilliant. So we are in conversation with a couple of entities from central government through the NAMDEVCO, through the various stakeholders. We are currently in meetings all the time in Trinidad as relates to stakeholders in terms of getting the PPP arrangement work. So we would have met with several people down there in terms of partnering and having the private sector get involved. So I would say that yes, there can be a greater collaboration from the ministry level. However, we are reaching out to various persons across the island to definitely get some more funding as relates to the partnership, the public-private partnership.
Certainly. Mr. Richard Alfred, Chairman of TADCO, Mr. Dionisio Salazar, the Chief Executive Officer of TADCO. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me on AM Prime this morning. I must apologize for having to rush as we conclude, but we are out of time, and I appreciate your time and your efforts in sharing this information with us. Do take care. Keep well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Once more, Mr. Richard Alfred, Mr. Dionisio Salazar from TADCO. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this edition of AM Prime. As I said, I'm happy to be back once more and look forward to continued conversations. And I just wish you a grand day ahead, maybe a good one, a productive one. And I'll see you again bright and early from 6 a.m. tomorrow morning here on WESN Content Capital. Look out for more local content and programming throughout the day. But for now, bye-bye.
WESN.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport